very challenging the selling of cybersecurity products.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the Execweb podcast. This time, we're going to talk about the cybersecurity sales playbook and talk about what works and what doesn't work with cybersecurity vendors. So, with me, I have Val, who is the founder and CEO of Execweb. Thank you for joining us, Val. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad. I'm great. Thanks so much for the time. I'm looking forward to this podcast.
Amazing. All right. So without further ado, let's dive in. So in this podcast, we're going to discuss the unique challenges faced by, cybersecurity vendors because it's a crowded market space, as everybody knows. And we're going to explore, why the generic pitches often fall flat and what vendors can actually do to stand out. We'll discuss everything from the common pitfalls and how tailored messaging and personalized approach can help vendors achieve their goals more effectively. Plus, we'll also take a closer look at how Execweb is transforming the vendor CISO connections and ensuring quality leads and better connections. So let's kick off. Well, I guess my first question to you in this podcast would be, what makes selling cybersecurity products and services uniquely challenging compared to other B2B products out there?
Yeah, Omer, I think that's a great question. Cybersecurity has many unique characteristics as an industry, and especially when it comes to selling within it. And first and foremost, have to highlight something that many people outside of cybersecurity are not aware of, but there are only about 3,500, maybe 4,000 cybersecurity vendors globally. That obviously makes this industry very unique. That's the entire total addressable market. And on the other side of the marketplace in the industry, there are about maybe 12 to 15,000 CISOs, director level and above security practitioners that those 4,000 cybersecurity vendors are trying to get in front of. So from a number standpoint, it's actually a very small industry when you think about it, because usually when people talk about industries, they talk about millions of people on both sides, right? And here, as you can see, it's only a few thousand. However, why the industry is very interesting and appealing, it's the actual dollar amount transacted. So last year, about $250 billion in cybersecurity services and products were transacted globally, and I think that number is only expected to grow from here. And that obviously makes the industry very unique. With
Right.
and selling, and for cybersecurity vendors to sell to CISOs and direct level and above security practitioners, usually the decision makers are trying to get in front of, for obvious reasons, they have to have a very unique personalization approach just so that they can distinguish themselves from all these other 3,000 companies out there who are also basically going after the same shareholders and stakeholders. And to do that, they have to have a very unique approach and to focus on providing value in the context not only of business but of cybersecurity services as well. And I think that's what has made very challenging the selling of cybersecurity products, just because there are only so many practitioners out
Right.
there in Fortune 1000 who can, first of all, have the budget, and second of all, have the will and the decision-making power to sign on the dotted line.
Right. And well, have you observed any common mistakes that cybersecurity vendors make when, approaching CISOs? Anything that you see, a common mistake across the board?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, Umair, is not only CISOs, it's basically everyone who is on the buying side. And many of those kind of mistakes, I would call them, they're not unique to cybersecurity, but they're uniquely pronounced in cybersecurity, and that's the cold calls, cold emails, LinkedIn emails. I know about 1,000 plus CISOs in my data, all in part of my LinkedIn network. A few hundred of those are part of the Execweb network. And I have to tell you, it's incredible to me how many emails and LinkedIn cold emails these people get per day. We actually did a survey internally, and the number came to about 150 per day on average per
Wow.
CISO, which is incredible. I mean, it's unbelievable when you think about it. And you just cannot get across and elevate yourself above the noise with this cold outbound approach. It just does not work anymore.
Right.
Email marketing in general is challenged across all industries at this point, and most
Yeah.
people would agree with that. statement. However, with cybersecurity, not only its challenges are an absolute non-starter, and people just CISOs don't even pay attention to emails; they just delete them all. So those are kind of the obvious mistakes people make. Calling CISOs on their cell phones. So I had this huge post, pretty viral actually on LinkedIn. I got about 150 comments or so, about 30,000 impressions. And my point there was that never ever call the CISO on their cell phone. It's always a bad idea. Obviously, there were two sides of this argument, and many of the salespeople, not I wouldn't say many, actually I would say a few of the salespeople believe that's not the case and that they should keep on calling them on their cell phones. And there were many CISOs that actually also commented on that post and made it clear that they don't want that. And
Right.
I
Right.
think it's very important for all sellers out there and cybersecurity startups to get in the mindset of their potential
Mm.
buyers, right? So that you understand how
Right. Right.
you should approach them. So that those are
So
the
you just,
main mistakes.
yeah. So you just mentioned that, cold outbound activities, the campaigns, they don't work, including, cold emailing or, cold LinkedIn outreach or, like cold calling. Like, so what options do the vendors have, right? So, because these have been, the most commonly used practices, not just in the cybersecurity space, but in general, these have been widely used for a very long time in the B2B space. So if we speak about cybersecurity specifically, so what options do the vendors have? How do they actually connect with, the right CISOs?
No, it's a great question, and it's an obvious one, right? And it's a complicated one and a concerning one, because to your point, how many options, how many different marketing channels can you
Yeah,
utilize to get in front of CISOs? And the brutal truth is not many. So there are
yeah,
only about three real channels that actually are effective and will, I believe, always remain effective. But they're difficult and challenging channels for cybersecurity startups. The first one, the best one by far, is to have this peer-to-peer referral on my ear, right? One
mm,
CISO of a Fortune 500 tells another CISO, "Hey John, I checked out XYZ company and I think they're doing something great in, let's say, API security. I know you're looking for API security, suggest you consider them." And that's by far the best way, right? But again, to
agreed.
influence that mind share,
Yeah.
right? It's very
Yeah,
difficult.
I
And
think
as
that
we know,
nothing can beat that. Obviously, I think that's the best. If
yes.
somebody can, vouch for you, I think that's the best thing. Okay, keep going. Well, sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt.
exactly. And the other big challenge there, but then the next question is how do you influence that and how do you get
Yeah.
in the mind share of this CISO so that they can suggest you, they can refer you. And I have noticed CISOs specifically tend to be very protective of their personal brand and personal name. So they only recommend
Mm,
startups that they feel very comfortable they're going to be a good fit for a peer of theirs. And as we know, Meyer, the big household names in cybersecurity like Palo Alto, CrowdStrike, whoever you might mention there, they have spent billions with a B to be in the mindshare of these CISOs and to get that referral to happen for them, right? And to have that brand awareness. Obviously, most startups cannot do that. So the second option is to use networks like Execweb. And we're not the only ones. I obviously believe we're the genuine and authentic one and the best one, but there are other ones that people can use. The power of Execweb and other cybersecurity networks is that we transfer trust. Our ambassadors, as you know, they trust me, they trust my team, and they trust we're going to get them in front of cybersecurity startups that make sense for them and can help them solve their problems, but also can be very price competitive, which also has the economic aspect there, right? An impact for them, positive ROI for the CISOs.
yeah.
And as you know, everybody's getting challenged now, budgets are getting constrained, so every CISO is being asked to do double the work with half the budget. So
Mm,
at that point, they obviously have to default on finding these hidden gems, which is our mission here and our promise to them to find them the hidden gems when it comes to cybersecurity startups. But that's the second way to do it: partner with a cybersecurity executive network like Execweb
right.
and get
So
help.
basically, with Execweb, essentially what we're doing is bypassing, all the cold outreach part, and you directly are in touch with the right CISOs that you always wanted to reach out to, right?
That's exactly right. And not only get in touch, but we actually confirm the business intent to we make sure we get them in front of an introductory sales meeting, which,
Okay.
as to your point, if you think about the marketing funnel, top of the funnel, website visitors, then leads, then SQL, then MQLs, then SQLs, we basically get you
Okay.
immediately from the top of the funnel to the SQL and to a meeting. And then
Right.
the next step is a POC, hopefully, right? So we
Got it.
bypass exactly to your point. We make that process much more efficient, and usually it takes weeks and months. We can get you in front of a potential ambassador of ours who is interested in your product, you being the cybersecurity startup that became a client of ours
Hmm.
within days, and otherwise takes weeks and months. But
Got
that's the
it.
second option, and the only last third option to get in front of relevant small regional events. Not so much the big ones, but what CISOs have told me, Umair, the small kind of 50 people, no more than
Right.
that. Usually, most of them, most of the attendees being CISOs. The challenge with those, you need to get invited to those. And if you're a
Hmm.
cybersecurity vendor, to get invited to those, it's challenging as well. But those are the three real ways, very authentic and genuine ways, and effective ways that you can get in front of
Right,
potential
right, right.
buyers and CISOs
Awesome.
and decision makers.
So, so you just mentioned, well, that you Execweb basically bypasses that whole process and that funnel where you have to do certain activities and get in front of the CISO. So you schedule the meeting. But as a vendor, I might think like how do how do you make sure that those CISOs are relevant to me? So how do you establish that relevancy? Do you have certain practices, certain checkpoints in place? How do you ensure the quality and relevance, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a key question because we obviously, as a cybersecurity vendor, if I'm in my, and I always put myself in my client's shoes on the cybersecurity vendor side, that's a key question I would always have, right? I want to ensure that there's business intent. Otherwise,
Yeah.
why are we partnering here, right? And I'm very cognizant of that. So what we do is we have built an online platform very specific to Execweb, proprietary. It's called Execweb Connect, where we allow the vendors to sign up after they become clients. And there are two levels of pre-qualifications. Once they sign up, Umair, they can go and highlight who they're targeting from a title, industry, number of employees standpoint. Then we feature 7 to 10 ambassadors who match that criteria. So that's first level of pre-qualification, matching business intent there. And then there is a second level, which is even more powerful. We allow each of our clients to ask 3 pre-qualifying questions, which are specific to them. They get the responses back from our ambassadors, usually within 24 hours, sometimes within 1 or 2 days.
Mhm.
And once that happens, Umair, then obviously they can very clearly pre-vet them and decide whether it makes
Right.
sense for them to have meetings with them. And then if that's the case, they see who that person is. They suggest 3 to 4 dates and times they're available. The ambassador picks one and the meeting gets scheduled. So this entire process
Got
can
it.
take place within a few minutes. And this is how we ensure that we get them in front of the right CISOs who actually have business need and intent. And we
Got it.
also ask the ambassadors themselves when they sign up with us over here. In
Hmm.
the contract, they have to let us know what kind of vendors they're looking for on a quarterly basis.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that's important. Okay, amazing. I mean, that's super cool. So, how do you CISOs typically evaluate vendor pitches? So when, the vendor they meet a CISO, obviously the CISOs are, evaluating whether it's the right fit or not. So, how do they actually evaluate the vendor pitches and what specific elements kind of, turn them off? Like, so any insights there?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been to 1,000 plus, 2,000 plus introductory sales meetings. I have seen it all on my ears, you can imagine. So there are a few big kind of themes there that kind of, to your point, ticks them off the way you put it. One of them is being very pitchy and salesy and coming across as let's go and let's get send the POC now. This is our product. What do you think? Do you like it? Don't you like it? Let's get the POC done as soon as possible. They don't like that. What they want to see is not only show me the product, which that's a given, that's the mean you have to do that obviously, but they're more interested in the business impact as well. Talk to me, first of all, ask me about my specific problems. Let me elaborate on those. Listen, don't talk, right?
Right.
And then tailor that pitch instead of the way you thought you should do it. Tailor it to based on my answer to your question of what is my biggest pain point in the context of data
Right.
security, right? And then don't show me the entire 500 features your product has on data security, but zero in on the ones that I specifically highlight I have a problem with. And I have to tell you, almost nobody does that. And those who do it
Oh, really?
immediately go up the ladder, so to speak, and become a priority for our ambassadors. Yeah, it's shocking to me. I have to tell you, I don't. It's. I think it's a bit for human nature, especially many of the sales executives who come to these meetings. They're obviously ready. They have prepared a pitch that they have done to the client before that, before they met our ambassadors, and they just human nature tends to go with the
Right.
punch,
The
to roll with the
same
punches.
generic
Yeah,
pitch. Yeah.
exactly the same generic pitch. This is the product. This is what we do. Look how amazing our products are. Look how we take care of your
Mm,
data security. And then, but then, first of all, they never really ask the actual ambassador specifically what you're looking for. I know you care about, you have data security problems that I can solve, but specifically which ones? Nobody, almost nobody asks us. Some do, and those are the
mm,
ones that do tend to perform better. But shockingly enough, most of them don't do that, and they should. They should do that, and they shouldn't ask it just so that. That's another thing I have noticed in many of these summaries, that they ask the question, but they ask it in such a way that it's obvious they're checking a box. You know, they really almost
mm.
don't care what the CISO has to say, right? But
Yeah.
actually, you have to authentically ask this question and listen, be quiet, and let them talk. Even if it takes them 10 minutes to talk about it, let them talk, right? And then I know they cut 10 minutes of your pitch now, but even that's even better, because now you're forced to go to the main points and don't show them
Mm.
the entire product, but
Yeah.
zero in on the features that actually will address those specific questions that
Right.
and
Right.
problems that the CISO herself or himself highlighted and described to you. But
Right.
that's what I'll say is the biggest problems I have seen.
Perfect. Well, I actually wanted to ask you next, like how the vendors could tailor their message, but I guess you already answered it
Yeah, that's a
in
big thing.
there.
I think that's a big
Yeah.
thing. And the other point I would like to add there and elaborate a little bit further on it is that on a more higher level, beyond what we just described and discussed, is the fact that many vendors tend to be focused on the product and the technology when it comes to cybersecurity, and that's obviously important. But they don't think about the business ROI.
Mm,
And that's important because
true.
many of these CISOs report into the board of directors, they report into the CIO, the CIO reports into the CEO. If it's a
Mm,
big vendor project, the CFO will get involved, and that's going to become more and more prevalent going forward, given the very difficult macroeconomic environment that emerges post tariffs and everything else going on politically. So I think that many vendors have to reconsider how they position their product beyond cybersecurity per se, if you know what I mean. They have to talk
yeah.
about how is my product not only solving your data security problems, let's say, but also improving your business, right?
Mm,
Because that's what the CISO has to pitch to their board of directors to get the deal done. And the board of directors, many of them are business people, finance professionals. They have no
right.
idea about cybersecurity. They care about it, but they only care about it at a very high level. And you gotta get them to that business outcome, impact, positive ROI that will incentivize them to say, yes, let's do this deal and let's get this startup onboarded.
Got it. Got it. Well, thank you for, shedding light on that. On that, I think that was pretty helpful. Next, I
Mhm.
wanted to ask you, like, so we already discussed about, that, the cold outreach doesn't work and how, so you mentioned three options that, vendors can work with today. But are any actionable tactics that the vendors can implement immediately to enhance their outreach efforts? I mean, I know the cold outreach doesn't work, but is there anything they can do right now to just improve their outreach and increase the engagement with the CISOs generally, like in all of their outreach?
Yeah, so my view is that the future of outreach has to be hyper personalization, right? So everybody talks about personalize your emails, personalize your outreach, but nobody does it the right way, or very few people do it the right way, in my opinion. I think personalization doesn't mean put the name of the person you're targeting, put their company, read a few lines about the company and mention that
Yeah,
in the email. Personalization means me writing to you on my ear and mentioning something, since I know you're in Pakistan currently and you're from Pakistan, mentioning something that is truly specifically unique to you, that it's in the
right.
subject line, right? That email would make no sense to anybody else but you, right? And I
Hmm.
have to dig deep to make this work, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't do it, right? Sometimes it's only so much public information out there that I can incorporate into an email. But mentioning, for example, I have seen very effective emails from startups to our CISOs mentioning their universities, mentioning things around the cities they have lived, or for example, they have mentioned, I have seen you in a previous event, and I wanted to talk to you, but I never got the chance to get in
Interesting.
front of you. That's something very unique, and they actually know who I am. They actually, this email is truly for me, right? And that's true for anything, actually. I think that's true for emails, and I think the outreach should also be more effective if they reconsider the cold email and cold calling approach. Which again, cold calls, I don't think you should do them to begin with at all. I don't think they work at all, no matter how you
Personalize
try
it.
to exactly how much you personalize it, because simply people don't pick up anymore, right? Especially
Yeah.
CISOs, they never pick up unknown phone numbers. It's almost impossible for them to pick up it, which to your point, it doesn't matter how much you personalize, because
Yeah.
somebody needs to speak to you for you to personalize anything, right? So
True.
you're basically dead at time zero, so it doesn't even matter. It's not worth trying. But I think what is very effective, I have seen recently actually, Umair, to work is if you put together a great webinar for CISOs that again is very personalized, especially in the context of what you have heard from previous meetings you had with CISOs, and they highlighted specific problems they're trying to address, whether it's in data security, AI security, whatever your product and service is offering, right? But it has to be a webinar that is built on the back of true, real conversations you had with other CISOs. And you aggregated the problems highlighted, you ranked them, you saw which problems were the ones that resonated the most, and you put a webinar around those, and you push that out there through LinkedIn, through YouTube. And then that's helpful because you know it's personalized, and those who actually have those problems, and by definition you have confirmed that's true by the many meetings you already had with CISOs and direct level above security practitioners, and they opt in, and that's super powerful. You always want to default on your potential buyers opting in versus you trying to grab them, right? So
Right.
those are the two things I would suggest.
Perfect, perfect. No, that makes a lot of sense. Well, so I guess you addressed most of the things, so I'm not left with many questions. So I guess my last question to you would be about Execweb. So for vendors, what are the performance metrics or success indicators that they can typically expect after, joining the Execweb platform?
Yeah, that's a great question, Omir. And I have to tell you, we've been around for 4 years now, as you know. So that's obviously a pretty long time. Most companies don't make it the first year, and even less make it during the first 5 years. And we're doing very well, thank God. So we have done more than at this point about 3,000 introductory sales meetings. So very statistically significant data set. And what we have seen is from that our vendor clients should expect on average 2 to 3 POCs out of 10 meetings, which is top tier conversion rate for cybersecurity. I actually a few months ago got approached by Business Insider, obviously top tier publication in the US. They had heard from one of our clients about this conversion, and they reached out to me and they're like, "We need to talk. This is insane. We've never heard anything like this before. Like consistently generating 2 to 3 POCs out of 10 meetings." And we have an article that was published in Business Insider on Execweb and our 30% conversion rate with our vendor clients. And also actually, because it's not only about outcome from how many clients can you get out of how many meetings, but also how fast those meetings happen.
Right.
And on that front, Omer, we have done consistently 10 meetings within 30 to 45 days of our clients signing up with us, which is incredibly fast. The official
Right.
stats is that from an initial outreach to a CISO or to any director level and above security practitioner to get a meeting, it takes months to get to a one-on-one meeting. So we get 10 meetings within 30 to 45 days with people that otherwise have
Wow.
never heard of these vendors. And again, the big point here is what I mentioned previously in one of your great questions at the beginning on who they should, which kind of marketing channels they should consider
Yeah.
adapting to get to clients, cybersecurity vendors. And I mentioned that the aspect of trust is transferable, right? And which is why we can do that, right? We can do it because
Yeah.
our ambassadors trust us that we're going to get them in front of the right vendors. So they opt in to take those meetings within 24 hours of hearing this about the startup, which would never ever happen if the startup went to them directly. It's just impossible.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, those numbers that you just quoted, they're just Amazing. So I think that actually wraps up all my questions. Well, thank you very much for
That's
taking
great.
out the
Thank
time.
you. It was my pleasure.
It was great to talk about, what works and what doesn't work in today's, cybersecurity landscape, and what vendors actually need to do to get in front of the right CISOs at the right time. Because like you said,
That's right.
you can continue to do the typical marketing activities and sales activities and spend months and put in money into all of these activities, and not be able to schedule meetings with the CISOs. On the other hand, there are platforms like Execweb and other platforms where you can meet CISOs who genuinely have the interest in working with you, and potentially close more deals in lesser time, right? So yeah, I think that
Exactly right.
that really answers all my questions. Any final comments? Anything you'd like to add, Val, before we sign off?
Yeah, so I mean, the last point I would like to mention, Omer, is the macro environment. I think that's important to be addressed before we wrap up this great podcast. I think we have to be very cognizant of what's going on politically, economically, with the global tariffs that were
Hmm.
announced. I think that will have a wide impact on many industries, including cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is not going to be somehow isolated from the impact there. I already actually had several clients that had to pull out partnering with us because their CEO apparently was given the information that they cannot proceed until from their board of directors until this tariff situation is kind of finalized and is
Hmm.
ironed out, so to speak. That's a big challenge. It's not only the tariffs in general. I mean, those are a big contributor, but in general, you can see how the stock market is collapsing now. So all these macro environments need to be addressed, and it's going to become only more challenging for cybersecurity startups to get in front of relevant CISOs, and it's going to become even less effective to do the typical, to your point, marketing channels. And that
Yeah.
famous saying, what is insanity? Insanity is doing the same things and expecting different results, and that's what unfortunately many startups are doing. They keep on
Hmm.
doing the same stuff that they always used to do. They don't take into consideration the very drastically different macro environment, which is why I wanted to highlight those aspects,
Right.
and the very reality of the fact that those CISOs also will be more and more constrained from a budget standpoint, from a time standpoint, and whatever didn't work before, it's most definitely not going to work in the future because it's going to become that
Hmm.
much more difficult to get in front of the right people. But
Right.
that those would be my final
Absolutely.
thoughts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the message for the vendors here is to adapt and adapt
Yes,
fast.
right.
Yeah, got it.
That's the for
All
all of
right.
us, not even for them, for
Yeah.
you, for me,
Oh,
for everyone.
absolutely.
Adapt or
I
die,
think
right? Adapt and grow
adapt or
or
die.
die.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, in the
Absolutely.
next one.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
I would love that, Omer. Thanks so
All
much for the
right.
time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Val. We'll
Thank
see
you.
you guys in the next podcast. Bye bye. Take
Bye
care.
bye. Take care. Bye bye.